Good morning, boys and girls, and welcome yet again to the southern wing of the Stink Bug Works. Today I have something different. For the past however long, everybody's been watching how-to videos, how to build, how to tune, how to solder, how to, select equipment, how to everything, how to basically build a boat from the ground up. Everything. We've discussed everything. Well, with one exception. And that is how to design a boat. Now, since I've acquired this new toy, I'm just waiting for parts to show up. I need a couple of parts so I can index the workpiece. So with that, and because I have AutoCAD and I've run AutoCAD for centuries, I'm going to show you how we design a boat in AutoCAD. But first, this little thing. Talked about it yesterday. Yeah, it may not have enough power to do the job. But using this nice little brass-tipped dead blow hammer and this slightly larger dead blow hammer, I managed to fit this larger battery in place of this smaller battery. It did require a little bit of surgery, and as I look at it, if I were to trim a little bit off of this skirt, let's call it, if I trimmed a little bit off of this skirt, it'd be a direct shot to the dog bone and I could grease it without removing the top. So I'm going to pull the top one more time using this exact screwdriver. See how it has the red paint on it? And I'm going to cut a little half circle there so I can access that dog bone. So we'll see if this has enough power next time to the pond. So, for the sake of one of my viewers, who I will call Sam, because here, are you ready for the same old tired joke? Because his name is Sam. Anyway, I took the drawing for this boat and started massaging them. Now, the problem with making this boat a twin is the main structure of the thing is a stringer going down here with bulkheads going across here. There's one. But what happens is you don't get a whole lot of space here to get a motor into there. It was hard enough to get the batteries in there. And my initial plan was to make a hatch here, but this thing, it had this curves and all that. And so starting with those drawings and working on a 16-inch hull, I just set some parameters. I said, okay, my motor is going to be 1 inch in diameter, and let's see what these are. These are inch and an eighth. Okay, well, I can fudge that a little bit. So the first thing you got to do when you're laying something out in AutoCAD, like this cat, is do a cross-section through the motors and see if there's room for them, because that's going to be your tightest fit, is these motors. And so I'm just kind of laying out some parameters, and I'm basing it on this hull shape, because everybody agrees that this is simple and easy. At this scale, or at this size, all that scale stuff, it's just not necessary. It's just not necessary. What is necessary is good sharp angles and flat surfaces. That's what's necessary. So this will be real easy to build, and I'm thinking there'll be a plywood. You actually build it upside down. There'll be a plywood floor, and then you'll glue in these plywood stringers, and then you'll glue on plywood ride surfaces. Now, I may make these out of 32nd ply. Now, what's going to happen is this piece, as it gets to the front, is going to curve this way, and it's going to curve that way. So we'll have to work out the composite curve for this piece to match those. And so that'll be kind of a fun little exercise, but it's easy in AutoCAD. It's a piece of cake. Everything just totally flat. But Dr. Jet, won't that look boring? Why, yes it will, but here's what I'm thinking. If I make the deck perfectly flat, just like this one, you see this sucker is perfectly flat up to here until it gets a bump for looks. I could make the entire deck just flat, and you could take foam, construction foam, lay it out on the deck any way you want it, sand it and shape it. If you wanted to, come up here to a big V pointing up like this to a big dragon head, why, you could. You very well could. So I think that's what I'm going to do. I'm just going to leave the top a flat pancake. Boom. Simple to build. You want something fancy? Make it fancy. This stuff is cheap, easy to shape. You look at it, you don't like it, you throw it away and get another one, you shape it and you go, okay, you glue it on, sand it, and I'll talk about different ways of doing this. For a boat, I used water-based sanding sealer and silk span on this one, but for something like this, you're probably better off going with 3/4 ounce fiberglass cloth and, epoxy, and then a little lightweight, spackle filler, and then sand that out. So there you go. We're going to work on designing a cat with Dr. Jet. So until next time, Jet out. Oh, one other thing I wanted to add, and where is it? When we're setting up this thing, in the beginning, you need to settle on power options. So I have a couple of options. First is cheap. Really, really cheap. This ubiquitous little 4,000 RPM per volt outrunner can be had anywhere for $25 or less. Maybe $15, maybe $10. I have no idea, but these are cheap and they're everywhere. The Big B had one in his outrigger. I think the outrigger was a little big for this, and he put too much power into it. And Brandon has one in his skedaddle, and so we'll see how it does. He's going to have to put a small prop on it because it's totally submerged. But this would be an option for this cat. This would spin a 32 millimeter prop, no problem. So there's option one. The problem is getting at these screws. These things mount this way, and there's only one way I can see of doing that, and that's to have a separate motor mount that you mount to the motor, and then you drop the motor in through a hatch, and that motor mount somehow indexes into something, and then something else locks it into place. That's how I'd have to do that. Or here's another option I've really given a lot of thought, and it might be the way to go. but it'd drive costs up quite a bit. But here we go. I like those clamp mounting systems, but in here, I'm not going to have enough room for the screws and the connecting rod caps and all that. It just won't fit. It's too tight in there. But what I could do is I could design these bulkheads in here such that it cradled the motor perfectly, and just like the other one, a connecting rod cap would go down on it and some piece would lock it into place. But that would have to fit a specific motor. And remember, I was looking at those 2040s, and they vary in length a little bit. So I'd have to be really careful. And I've been thinking, well, what motor would I want to put in a Cat that had Jet somewhere in the name? And it all of a sudden dawned on me. That little 707 motor that's in the Mozilla 400. Now, the one I have in there is what is it? It's a 2Y, I think it is, with a 4100 kV. I'm turning the smallest cut down Octarium 427 I have. Now, that motor comes in all sorts of winds and all sorts of kVs, from really stupid low to really stupid high. And in the 3,000 to 4,000 range, well, with this one, 4100 being the high end of the range, there's about 4 or 5 choices, maybe 6 choices between 3,000 and 4,000 RPM per volt. So there's a whole gamut of motors in that range. I could design a hatch and system that would fit that motor. The problem is it wouldn't fit any other motor. Okay, so not everybody wants to go out and buy new motors because new motors aren't cheap. But, I could maybe in finger quotes, make a deal with Steve. I'd have to talk to him. Make a deal with Steve that if you ordered, you'd have to order 2. If you ordered 2 motors from him and gave him a secret code word, then he'd give you a deal on a couple of motors. So we'll have to see. I'll have to ask him. And in fact, if the laser cutting is dedicated to his motor, the lengths and diameters and such, so it's a drop-in clamp-in when something closes on it, I might even steal his name, because his name is German for new, N-E-W. It's N-E-U is his name. So I could call it the new Jet 16 rather than the JetCat. I could steal his name and stick it in there. He wouldn't mind at all because he's selling motors. He doesn't care. Yeah, you can put my name on everything that sells motors. So what do you guys think about that? The new JetCat, as opposed to the old JetCat. Until next time, boys and girls, jet out.